Okay, so I think we can get started. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Francis Banguo. Now you're in the little screen. If you want for a moment to stop sharing and then reshare, we'll see you better. Or you can stay there and then during the question time and the discussion, they will see you on the bigger screen, whatever you prefer, Francis. So Professor Banguo is talking from Ottawa now, so that's the beauty of technology. And I'm very pleased that he is to introduce him. He is the director of, first of all, he's an associate professor at the University of Ottawa in the Faculty of Education. He's also the director of, the president of ACLA, CAL, you probably somebody know it under Canadian Association of Applied Linguistics, and ACLA is the French acronym Association Canadienne de Linguistique Appliquée, and is the director of EduCline, which is a research center, research group of the University of Ottawa. And you are also Vice Dean, are you Vice Dean?
Yes, I am Vice Dean, yes.
Yeah,
of governance and student affairs, yeah.
So before the research and now the other roles, the other heads, is Vice Dean of the Faculty of Education. And he is an associate professor who specialized, who specialized in the field of second language teaching. And this research falls within the scope of post-structuralism, and it focuses on language teachers and language and learners' adaptation to unfamiliar teaching and learning environments, including language teacher training, the implementation of ICT, information and communication technologies in second language education, and the teaching of French as language of instruction in linguistic minority situations. So I'm very on top of all these wonderful things that Francis is doing. He's also a good friend. And, yeah, and he's like me, somebody who came all the way from Europe because he's French, and he moved to Canada some years ago and started this new life and adventure. So we have a lot in common. I was honored to be offered the possibility to contribute one chapter in the book that he recently edited, and of which you have read the introduction, together with two other colleagues from the University of Ottawa, Monica Waterhouse and Doug Fleming. And we were thinking today that maybe we should try to invite Francis again and at least one of his colleagues to do something else with Cyril, because of the interest, as you have seen, of the theoretical framework they are working on and the type of research. So I'm particularly happy to have you here, and I thank you again for accepting this invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enrica, for this nice presentation, and thank you for inviting me. I have to say that any opportunities I have to talk about the Guattari and the work that I do, I really cherish these opportunities. So thank you again for inviting me. So today I'm going to talk about, the topic of my presentation is going to be a Deleuze-Guattarian perspective on teacher education in CAL, which is a change from the proposal that you probably saw. As you can see, from a Deleuze-Guattarian perspective, life is constantly changing and evolving, and this is an example of that. One day I was working on this presentation, and for some reasons, the title did not suit me anymore, and I changed it. So this is the kind of things that I'm interested in my research, and I've been trying for, I would say, the past almost 10 years to develop a conceptual framework that will enable me to research this particular issue of change, issue of adaptation, to and also in order to document my own practice as informal practice as a teacher educator, particularly interested in the integration of technology in this case. So Enrique, I don't know how this is usually taking place. Do you have questions at the end or during the presentation?
Yeah, no, usually you have your, let's say, almost an hour to develop your presentation, up to, but that depends on where you.
Okay, great, super.
We have a question and answer time or discussion time, actually, also based on the fact that the students have read the two articles that you had, so the introduction and your article, the call, and the discussion can be also that. And then we have a little break and you will be free and we will continue to discuss your articles and the concepts that you will have by then brought to us.
Okay, perfect. So, as I said, my relationship with Deleuze and Guattari started almost 10 years ago when I moved to Canada and started to work with Diana Masney, which had been working with Deleuze and Guattari for a long time. And I'm really talking about a relationship because it is a journey. It is a journey to, let's say, dive into the world of Deleuze and Guattari. It is a journey because we are going through different stages and stages of interest, of disgust sometimes because it's so much to take in. It's also very challenging, but challenging in a good way because there's something about it that makes it particularly interesting. And I think that what it is that it really brings innovative ideas about issues I've been interested in for a long time. Particularly the idea when we start with a problem. For Deleuze and Guattari, problems are actually positive. Problems are a way to change life. Problems are not meant to be resolved, but actually to help us think and to help us think differently. So everything starts with a problem. And in my case, one of the issues I was dealing with, particularly as a teacher educator in COL, computer assisted language learning, is that although I was helping teachers developing the competencies, the skills that they needed to use the technology into their classroom. When it came the time to actually do it, there were many elements that came into account that made it very difficult, or this process of integration was not always what it was expected to be, particularly when it came to the relationship of these teachers with change, with the constant change that was created by the implementation of technology into their classroom. And I would even say constant change implementation, because of course the technology was constantly changing and they always had to rethink their practices. And this particular element was very difficult for teachers for many reasons to actually manage, deal with, because these disruptions were always perceived negatively as being a threat as being something that they that could potentially challenge them, but also challenge their expertise as teachers, but rarely as something positive. So I started to question myself around really how can I really help prepare teachers, and particularly language teachers, to work within this constant change and instability, um, um, but is actually generally created by the implementation of technology. And at the time, I came across the work of Roy, which is also a scholar that is influenced by the work of Deleuze and Guattari. And in his book from 2003, he really started to challenge the idea that basically in teacher education, we are not really preparing teachers to work in innovative situation, in I would say unstable environments, such as a classroom. In part because most of the practices and around teacher education were still based on the idea of a copy, an image that usually an image of what a good teacher may be, and trying to help teacher reproduce this idea. And for him, as you can see here in some of the quotes, although a school may seem open to innovation, so-called good teaching were often associated with control, behavioral order, and regularity. This is why notions such as disruption, disorder, all of these notions were usually seen in a negative way. So this really helped me started thinking about these notions in relationship to my own practice as a teacher educator, but also in relationship to my practice as a researcher as well. And I started to question myself as a researcher and really wondering if I was also as a teacher ready to work within such unstable environment and study such an unstable environment. My training as a teacher really allowed me to do so. And you can imagine that through the quote that you can see on the screen right now, that I came to the conclusion that might not be the case. Throughout my training, I learned how to be a good researcher. I learned all the methodology, all the good practices of research, and I learned how to reproduce them to the best I can. But one thing that I noticed is that when dealing, although we recognize that life is unpredictable and complex, particularly when we talk about education, our practice as a researcher was usually when we're studying complex environment was to take out the complexity out of the environment, was to in a way make it more linear, more comprehensible through linearity, coding, and other practices. So once again, I started to question, wonder about my own practice, and starting to say that if myself as a researcher and a teacher educator, I'm not able to really work in such environment, how can I really help my the teacher I'm working with to do so when they are dealing with the ever-changing environment created by the implementation of technology. So, so the question that I really basically that I had was, how can I prepare a language teacher within the constant changes, ambiguity, and messiness associated with the integration of technology in their teaching practice? And as a researcher and a language educator, am I able to work within mess, ambiguity, and constant changes? And this question have been guiding my thinking and my practice for the last, I would say, once again, 10 years, 8 years. So this is one of the elements that really, once again, attracted me with the work of Deleuze and Guattari, because although it was very challenging, because it completely disrupted all the foundation that I had, all the conceptual, philosophical foundation that I had as a researcher and as a teacher, educator. But it was attractive because it really provided me with the tools to actually work within change, the ambiguity and the difference, all the disruptions I just talked about. So in a nutshell, once again, the work of Deleuze and Guattari is an intricate work. I'm not here pretending to provide you with a definite representation of what it is. You should take it as my own understanding, my own sense of it, based on my multiple reading, my multiple experiences, and also, I would say, multiple headaches that that emerge through these readings. So both Deleuze and Guattari, particularly in their book from 1990, recognize that how our lives are constructed is intrinsically connected to the ways we think about ourselves and the world. And though they believe that thinking differently might change our lives, so basically their ideas was quite simple in a way when we think about it. If you want to change the way we live, we must change the way we think, particularly the way that we think about our lives and reality. Notably, thinking differently in a Deleuze-Guattarian sense implies breaking away from assumptions, habits, routines, and pre-established way of doing and conceiving things. Excuse me, my phone reading. Let me just stop that. Sorry about that. So for importantly, Deleuze and Guattari did not believe in a transcendent ideal, but rather in an immanent of reality. And his philosophy their philosophy of immanence rejects the binary divide between inside, outside, material, immaterial, and instead privileged the interconnection between human and human entity that produce reality. For Deleuze and Guattari, immanence should be considered as a plane where life operates within, as opposed to beyond human and material experiences. To approach the question of how might think exist, then Deleuze and Guattari creates an innovative ontology, which means a study of what there is that does not engage in the separation of ourselves from what we might be capable of. And this last part is the quotation from May 2005. Specifically for Deleuze and Guattari, reality is constituted of three dimensions: the virtual, the intensive. The virtual is a plane of consistency where being is indivisible and where there are no hierarchies. The virtual is not accessible to human, but is constantly folding, unfolding, and refolding into different expressions that constitute observable reality, the actual dimension. The intensive is located between the actual and the virtual and involves the element, forces, flows, and movement within which the virtual expresses itself. It is important to note that in their views, the virtual is not transcendent to observable reality, but is rather immanent to it. It means that being is weaved into the intensive and the actual. You can say that the virtual, the actual, and the intensive are all real and are constantly interacting with each other.
Francis, sorry, can I interrupt you a second?
Yes.
Movement you do sometimes cut a little bit the sound.
Oh, okay.
To find the right distance from your micro, because a little bit. Like if you.
Okay, so I try to move as less as possible.
No, it's just a question of your distance from your micro that changes, and we lose one half of the word.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Sorry.
So basically, when thinking about the virtual and the intensive and the actual, what does that mean? In that there is more to reality than what we can see and perceive. And for Deleuze and Guattari, the intangible is as real as the tangible. We should always take that into consideration. Gesture, movement, a word, a saying, or anything that we perceive and see, which is the actual, is the expression of many elements that are not necessarily tangible, that operates in the virtual and the intensive, and are expressed in that way in the actual. So for instance, I always use the example of, because it's from my experience as a teacher-educator, when we have a student that, for instance, sometimes when I introduce technology to some teachers, some of them have kind of very violent reactions. I had sometimes people leaving the room or crying sometimes, and others were quite happy and excited about it. So this visible embodied reactions, expression, are the results of many elements that are not necessarily tangible and visible to the eye, and not necessarily logical in a way, but contributed to this kind of manifestation and expression. So all of these elements are as important as what is tangible is and visible. So in that regard, one thing also we need to understand is that there is no way we can predict what's going to happen in the virtual. There's no way we can predict how elements are going to connect with each other and may result in either someone crying or someone being very happy. There's no way we can predict what's going to happen, because nothing repeats itself the same way twice, including relationships, interconnections between elements. So what all this means is that life is foremost creative, and there is always more to reality than our bodies and our mind can perceive, conceive, and express. In this virtual dimension of existence is as important as the tangible. Then the study of what there is it's not when we see conceptual stability, but rather when we see reality in terms of constant differences instead of as fixed or fluid identities. Ontology then should be conceived as a creation, which means an opening to new ways, rather than a discovery, the finding of what there is. And this is also from May 2005. We worked very good introductory book on Deleuze and Guattari's ontology. To help us in this endeavor, Deleuze and Guattari have created concepts that aim to identify what there is, but try to disturb reality and stimulate thinking. In this way, Deleuze and Guattari allows for the creation of new possibilities for life, not only by providing an account of what it is for something to be living, which to be expressed, to exist, but also by opening new ways of conceiving the world. So, based on these ideas, my objective here, and this has always been also the objective of my research in general, is to open a space propitious to the emergence of novel thoughts, teacher education in computer-assisted language learning, CALL, and the associate research, and illustrate what can be produced when we do so. Once again, the idea of always opening a door for the possibilities to do something differently. So, as I said, Deleuze and Guattari created a number of concepts to help us think differently. The concepts I would say that had the most impact in many fields, including in education, is the concept of the rhizome. As you may know, in botany, a rhizome is a type of root, that we, for instance, when we talk about the sugarcane root, it's a root that grows horizontally and not vertically. And it's a root that goes in many directions. It's unpredictable, it's multiple, and it can break in one part but start growing in another part. There's no way to understand sometimes when the root starts and when it ends. So Deleuze used this image of a root to create an alternative image of thought that is detached from the traditional Western linear, binary, and hierarchical logic that privilege sameness and repetitions. So the growth of the rhizome is unpredictable, multiplicious, and disruptive, as I said, and they are constantly changing and flexible. In rhizomatic interconnections have no order, logic, hierarchy, beginning or end. So rhizomatic thinking emerged within entanglements of productive and disruptive connection between tangible and intangible elements of agencement. As such, it is unpredictable and open to difference and creative potential, as highlighted by Monica Waterhouse. Another concept that had major impact on current thinking in many fields, including education, is the concept of assemblage. In the literature, in English, you will mostly find the term assemblage. This is how it's the concept of the French word agencement. Personally, I prefer using the original term because for me, the English term assemblage does not really express well the idea that an agencement is usually something that it's when elements that were not necessarily supposed to be together originally come together and usually in order to perform, to do something. There's always a purpose, a reason behind it. Actually, I'm not the only one who thinks that the concept of the word assemblage does not really express what the word agencement expresses. And this is why also, if you read the literature in English, you can also find the term arrangement. So, so here I'm going to use the term agencement. This concept originally, as I said in French, to communicate this unpredictability and consistent reinvention that is for me central to the concept of agencement. So in simplest terms, an agencement refers to the way heterogeneous elements connect, co-adapt, and co-produce something new. Agencement emphasizes function over essence and materiality. Therefore, an agencement should not be characterized by its part, but rather by the rationality of its part, how they work together, and by what they produce. What matters then is not so much to understand what an element of the world is, but rather to understand what it can do within an agencement, as all we know are agencements. So basically what Deleuze and Guattari are saying is that the concept of agencement was in part created to illustrate the workings of the virtual, the intensive, and the actual. And so all we know basically are agencements of multiplicities of elements, be it material, human, expressive, abstract, concrete, any elements of the world coming together in order to produce something, in order to do something. And of course, this working, this coming together are temporal and will never be the same twice, because the interconnection within agencements are also rhizomatic. So agencement emphasizes function, as I just said. So rationality and production should not be measured exclusively by what has been actualized, because beyond the actual, potential lies in the potential lies in the connection and movement on the virtual dimension, where an infinite number of potential interaction may be present and on the verge of actualization. In other words, the element relevant to this research on teacher education may extend beyond the immediate and direct, such as the course assignments, the assessment, the participants, the reviewer, the researcher, etc., to include an infinite number of productive capacities that emerge only when these elements, and perhaps others that have yet to be actualized, connect in the virtual and produce actualizations. Interconnective lines within the agencements are rhizomatic, with order, logic, hierarchy, beginning or end. Then all the elements within the agencement are equal, free of human hierarchy and individualist center or participant subjectivity, thus dissolving the notion of human agency and the subjects as autonomous rational actors. Instead, just as the shoots and roots of the rhizome wrap around a decentered halo cavity, there is no subject as a locus of an agencement, but only an ongoing entanglement of connective lines and productive elements working together to produce becoming. So basically what that means is that within an adjustment allows us to decenter the human. One thing that also the ontology of the Lusanguatari allow us to do is to take our focus on other things that the linguistics and the human. It allows us to also take into consideration the working of non-human elements, may they be tangible, intangible, abstract, and concrete, and see how these elements work together in order for them to always produce transformation and becoming. So, as I said, these two concepts have had quite an impact on different fields and have helped a lot of researchers and scholars to think differently about their practice. You can see now in the field of second language education, quite a number of scholars who are using these concepts just for that, just to help us think differently about their own practice and also reality. For instance, Kanaga Raja uses the concept of agencement to problematize the privileged status given to language and speakers when studying communicative and meaning-making processes. In the same way, Tuhi uses also the concept of agencement to conceptualize languaging differently. See that within this understanding, she really take into consideration not just the linguistic, just the language in itself, but also other things such as the body, the air, the hands, their mouth, the face, the tool that they are using, etc., etc., and how all these elements, how they work together in a specific space and time to produce something new, to produce something different. Dagenet, Brisson, Forte, and André also uses this concept to reconceptualize the concept of when we're talking about pluriliteracy, and they're using the concept of agencement pluriliteracier to experiment with the way social and material entities interconnect in multilingual and multimodal circumstances. Also, Waterhouse uses the concept of rhizome to reconceptualize the curriculum and create the concept of rhizocurriculum to think differently about learning and interaction between teachers and learners in the language classrooms. To come back to Dagenet, they're using, to Dagenet, Brisson, Forte, and André, they're using the concept of agencement pluritelacier to reconceptualize the notion of répertoire langagier, plurilangagier. Et donc, it's a way for them also to take into consideration, once again, the more than human, and take into consideration non-human material entities. So personally, I've been working also with the concept of becoming. In a nutshell, becoming refers to the transformation of elements within an agencement. This concept was particularly appealing to me because it allowed me to understand that basically what I was going to teach to teachers in the classroom as part of the teacher education program was going to become something different as soon as it will be in the classroom. And although I knew that intuitively, always the concept of becoming gave me the tool, the conceptual tool, to actually understanding it, working with it, and studying and exploring it. So basically, for Deleuze and Guattari, we never become something else. We never become like something. We always become something else. So once again, we never become like something. We always become something else. So this is why they said that becoming produces nothing other than itself. It has its own becoming itself. We are becoming whatever we are, based once again of the entanglements of temporal and spatial relationship connections within specific between specific elements that are part of different agencements. Another concept that attracted me is a concept of sense. It's related to Deleuze and Guattari's notion of the way that they conceptualize the connections between form and content. And we can think about, once again, the interconnections between the virtual and the actual. For them, the relationship between form and content is definitely not a linear relationship. It's a rhizomatic relationship. Therefore, it is unpredictable. It is not logical. It is hierarchical. There is no hierarchy, and it never repeats itself the same way twice. And this is where sense emerge. So sense lies at the intersection of content and expression, emerging when elements of the work come together within an agencement. In other words, sense is produced out of nonsense. It's produced out of things that do not in themselves have sense. So for instance, let's take, if you can see, let's take this bottle. In itself, if I just take this bottle and I place it somewhere in itself, it has no sense. It's only if I connect it to a human being that calls it a bottle that it's starting to get sense. Or if I, let's say, start drinking in it, it's say, oh yeah, that's the bottle that allows him to drink. But let's say that I started to use the same element and started scratching my head with it, doing other elements with the sense, it may have another sense. Imagine now that we have a cat that comes and start playing with that same object. Then it will not be necessarily a bottle anymore. It will become a toy for the cat, etc., etc. So depending on the connections that we have, sense may emerge in different ways. And these connections, once again, are unpredictable. They are rhizomatic in nature, and they never repeat twice the same way. So another concept that I use, the concept of learning. And for Deleuze, you can imagine, since we never become like something, so learning also occurs through rhizomatic flows and the open-ended process of becoming. So learning, in fact, is a pure creation. It's always singular. As Deleuze and Guattari said, it's so difficult to know how someone learns, because you never know in advance how someone will learn. By means of what love someone becomes good at Latin, etc., etc. What encounter make someone a philosopher. So we never know that. This is thing that is always that one cannot really predict, and even when we think that we can predict, most of the time it happens that no, it never occurs in that way. So because learning is seen as a constant experimentation, contact with the real, the ever-changing capacity of elements of the world to transform and be transformed. So basically, learning is a process of discovery of how elements can be changed and transformed through different actions, through the interactions, the connections of different elements. And this is why the outcome of learning can never be predicted. So using these different concepts, the concept, let's say this visual concept of teacher becoming in call started to emerge. And actually the chapter in the book that Enrique mentioned basically is a chapter that addresses the emergence of this conceptual, of this visual concept of becoming in call. So if you want to find out how this concept emerged, I would invite you to read the chapter. Teacher becoming in call, TBIC, is a concept that emerged while thinking within all of the concepts and ideas that I just talked about to help second language pre and in-service teachers and teacher educators in call, as well as researchers, to help them get a sense of the possibilities of their journey within call. In my practice as a teacher educator and a researcher, it is currently actualized as is visual concept. I am currently using this in my courses, and I'm going to talk about it later, to help a teacher educator start thinking differently about their processes, their learning processes, and start seeing them as pure, singular creations. And also for them to, and of course, the final goal is to help them deal differently with the unpredictability that is generally generated by the integration of technology into their practice. To see this as being something actually that could be positive and not necessarily a negative disruption, but an opening to the possibilities to do things differently. So this concept is a rhizomatic agencement of expressive human, material, and technological elements intermingling with the force of stabilization, destabilization, and restabilization with no beginning and no end. Various points of entry, while the elements of this agencement are randomly situated. TBIC appears in the middle to express that it is a point of entry into the agencement of teachers' experiences with call. Moreover, connecting lines are actualized in various colors and thickness to express that element of TBICs never connects the same way twice, these are the colors, and with the same intensity or resonance, and this is the thickness. So once again, concepts are not meant to represent reality, but really to help us think differently, with the idea that by thinking differently, the concept will also transform and change. So that's something that I'm also trying to implement into my practice as teacher educators, and I'm going to show you later, I'm going to show you an example of how this can be materialized into a course. So here I'm going to talk about the project I've been working on for the past 5 years, which is basically the design of a learning space that will allow teachers among other things, to embrace creativity, see productive possibilities in unexpected and differential events, and experiment with ways of knowing that encompass experiential knowledge and constant change. This space that I'm creating materializes as an online course, a 12-week online graduate level teacher education course in Call. In this course, a student completes 30 hours of community service learning, which means that they have the possibility, it's an option for them to work within an institution in the community where they're going to help someone, usually an educator, to integrate technology into their practice. And they have a chance to do that for 30 hours, a minimum of 30 hours. So the reason why I introduced this particular assignments into the course is because I use the work of Carrington and Hired that's conceptualized CLC as l'agencement, and that illustrated that this particular activities type of learning has a potential to disrupt structured approach and enable teachers to experience learning in all its complexity within the field of education. So that's why I decided to integrate this into the course. How am I doing for time, by the way?
You have, well, another 10 minutes, more or less. Is that enough?
Okay, so I'm going to move very quickly. So in this course, students have the possibility to write weekly blogs, and this also within the blogs about their experience in the CLS program. It's a way for them also for me to guide their thinking and for them to also consider how other elements beyond human and expressive element and linguistic element can affect their learning in a way that makes their learning process unique and not reproducible. I use questions such as, how does it work? How does this element function? What does that produce? Well, what are the possibilities? What possibilities were opened by this disruptive event, et cetera, as a way really to get them to think differently. Also, as the final assignment, students were also required to design a reflective multimedia posters. And I'm going to show you some of these data associated with this poster. I'm not going to spend too much time on the course because I think that you had a possibility to read about it in the article that was given to you. So I would like to spend some time talking about Deleuzian-inspired research that draws on transcendental empiricism. Such research does not attempt to reproduce the world, but rather aims to acquire a sense of the ways that something novel emerged and to contribute to a world yet to come. To do so, the Deleuzian-inspired research moved toward a decentering of the researcher as a subject and invites a researcher to engage in the flows of connection that occur from different parts of the research agencement in action, so that unexpected elements might emerge to become affected forces in the analysis of the collected material. Thus, research is conceived as a multiplicity of assemblages that shape and are shaped by the production of knowledge. Hence, different stages of the research agencement could be perceived as forces that produce something within entanglement of affective connections. So basically, when we talk about research in the Luso-Guattarian way, we are talking about a decentering of the researcher. The researcher is part of an agencement, and as such is also taken into consideration into the research. But what is more interesting to see is to see how many elements of the research agencement interact with each other to actually affect thinking. And in this case, the researchers thinking process about a particular element or phenomenon. So there are attempts to provide, describe the different characteristics of the Lusian-inspired research, and Vanini is one of the scholars that attempted to do that. And he referred to this research as a non-representational research. And indeed, because such research does not attempt to reproduce the world, it does not attempt to describe, understand, or explain an empirical reality. Better tried to better cope with the more than human, more than textual and multisensual world. One thing also that is important to understand that such research is not interested in talking about the past, about what happened in the past, because what happened in the past has already changed and will not be reproduced. It's much more interested in understanding what's happening in the moment, and mostly when analyzing the data, when conducting the research, and using this intense moment to consider what might happen next. So it's all about research that is there not to control, but rather to open doors, open lines for possibilities to do things differently. So the emphasis is on experimentation with the aim to rupture and settle, renew, rather than represent and control. So in my research, I use the concept of TBIC to do that, also to experiment within relations and mutual formation between animate and inanimate elements, to experiment with ruptures, to experiment with the capacity of elements to transform and be transformed, to experiment with notion of stabilization, destabilization, restabilization, to experiment also with the things that are intangible, not easily graspable, like with things that we can't grasp easily. I'm interested in the present and the future of teacher becoming, not the past. And also I'm interested in the way resonance, forces, intensity affects the research process. So you had an illustration of that in the article that was provided to you. You were able to see how when I look at the data, I was trying to express how the data affected me, and how this intensive connection I had with some of the data affected my thinking, and what this thinking produced, what came out of this. So that's really how I am trying to conduct the research now based on this framework. And you could see that what was produced out of this thinking is a transformation, among other things, many transformations, including transformation of the course itself. So because of time, is it better if I stop here and then we can talk, or I can continue?
This is another example. I think, how many slides do you have?
Well, I wanted to give an example of a rhizomatic, of a rhizoanalysis. So considering they had an example of that in the article, it may be best if we stop and talk about, discuss, because I know that it's a lot of information. So
Yeah, but one example, if it's not too long, I mean, you have a rhizomatic analysis, because now that everybody has seen the heads with some fog, you know, because it was a lot of concept and very, very interesting. But it's now important to see how you did the analysis on the basis of some of the concepts that you presented.
great. So I'm going to, so yes, so basically what I do is that I use rhizoanalysis. And rhizoanalysis, there is no particular way of doing it. But basically, it's based on the idea of trying to map the working of the virtual. And Masny uses the concept of palpation. You know, when you're trying to, when your arm hurts, you don't know why it hurts, so you're trying to palpate to get a sense of what's happening, and from that palpation you may decide that yes, probably the muscle or the bone, or there's something that is happening. So we're using this concept of palpation of the data to get a sense of the working of the virtual, the intensive, and the actual. Not, you know, not with the idea of reproduce once again a reality, but to really help us think about the possibility for this reality to be something else. So. So here I'm going to use data from the second actualization of the course that I just talked about. And this is actually the first time that I was implementing into my practice the virtual concept that I just told you about, the virtual concept of TBIC that I just told you about. And I'm going to show you the working of these concepts and how I'm using this to help me design this course based on a piece of data or for some reason had a particular intensive impact effect on me. This is a collage. In the article that was submitted to you, there was a link to a website. On this website, you could access the collages created by the students in the class, in the course. And this is one of the collages that they created. So that's basically what she did, is that she, the student, created a collage, a website based on her experience in the course, because that was the goal of the assignments, and really tried to think differently about her own becoming within the course, and using the concept of TBIC, teacher becoming in call. So this student was a journalist most of her life in developmental organization. At the time of the study, she had been at the University of Ottawa for 2 years, where she worked full-time as a senior writer and editor. In this particular collage, I would like to first focus on what she did here. Right? Yes?
Don't see the collage.
Well, what I call a collage is the entire website.
But can you still show it?
Oh, you cannot see it. Sorry, I thought you could.
Because I think
Yeah.
actually on another screen, we keep seeing just the
because they're sharing only
just
the
the link. Yes, the address.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Let share the other screen.
The link is 161 in the article.
Let me stop the
Share and you share.
show.
To end the show, just go to share and share the other where you have it open.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay.
So go
right
to
there.
share and share the other screen, the other one. Right, exactly. Now we can see.
You can see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to get out of this share. Yeah. So, so this is the website that she created, and it was built on her experience in her community service learning. She picked that option, and as part of her community service learning, she was placed with the Institute of Canadian and Aboriginal Studies, where she had to create a report on the way technology could be used to help revitalize indigenous languages. And this experience was quite eye-opening to her, to an entire universe that she was not aware of. And this is what she tried to express within this particular collage, which here in this particular case takes the shape of a website. In this particular, here I would like to use this part, 1980, where she talked about the beginning in the 80s, where she used a typewriter to actually write her MA thesis. And she created this video because one thing else what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to suggest, encourage my students to use other means to express themselves beside purely language. So I encourage them to use videos, audios, other means to express their ideas. So this is this is what she produced.
That looks like my thesis in Italy. The first one, the Italian.
So you get the idea. And so when I go through the data, I'm not trying to look for patterns. I'm trying to, I'm not looking, but I am much more sensitive to connections, to resonance, intensity. So when somehow a piece of data affects me in a way that is much more intensive, resonates with me more than another piece of data, that's what I use as a piece of entry into the rhizo analysis. So this particular, when I was going through the entire data set and the collage, this particular video resonated with me. And this is what I used as a point of entry into palpating, mapping, thinking with the concept of TBIC within the agencement of these particular students becoming in call. So first, let me go back to the actual PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And the slide when I talk about Kerry. So this is, can you see now? Are you able to see the slides? Yeah?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
So, so it's all about also rhizo analysis. It's all about movement and slowing down and speed, because that's part of the intensity, the intense realm of reality. So first, let's slow down the flow of these students becoming in call within this presentation agencement. So right now I'm going to read you a rhizo analysis that I've done. Once again, it's all about the present. So that's what something that I wrote in the present while doing rhizo analysis. And I'm going to read it to you, but that's what came out of this rhizo analysis. So let's slow down the flow of carries becoming in call within this presentation agencement by mapping the tangible, intangible, material, and human element that could have contributed to the emergence of this video as an actualization of her becoming in call. At this point, thought associated with the following section of her collage introductory text start to emerge. And here, I bolded some passage within this within the student transcript of her interview to show when connection happened in my mind and when thoughts were produced as a way to map why this particular vignette was selected. This vignette, you can see the student explains why she how come she came to design or create this video, what she wanted to express within this video. One element that really struck me and attracted my attention, and this kind of connection don't have to be logical, but somehow is information that she provided about the manual typewriter gift that she used at the start of her studies, and the way that she never worked with a GIF before. So she saw this picture of a typewriter, and this picture of a typewriter created all of these thoughts, and which eventually led to the creation of the video. So in this video, many elements seems to be related. Video, handwriting, NMA thesis, and fun, and. We may then want to consider the way that the capacity of this element to transform and be transformed may have been affected by other elements of this agencement. We may want to think about the ways, the intensity of the connection that emerged when the student collided with the .gif pictures may have amplified the capacity of this picture to create change within the agencement of her becoming in call. No one could have predicted this encounter between this student and the picture. And we will never know what could have happened if this encounter did not occur. It looks like it did contribute to the emergence of the desire to work with such picture and experiment with a new set of technological skills. And then I create a connection, there's a connection that occurs with another piece of data associated with a student. And that's another vignette. And I use this vignette in the same way to start my thinking about to continue thinking about the design of the course and what may occur to eventually come to a transformation and a